Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And a large number of people have awared me of the Lebron James squatting video. I've been sent multiple links to it. So I went ahead and ripped a copy, which I'm going to flip in here for you guys to watch. Damn. Sweet 8-pound, 6-ounce newborn baby Jesus. Let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing. Work on skilling up my crafting a little bit and let's talk about this. Alright guys, some people, if you're not familiar with squatting, they might say, well, what's the problem with this? Guys, there's a ton of problems with this. And we're going to talk a little bit about genetics and athletic ability and how sometimes, as I oftentimes say, some people are so gifted with their genetics and athletic ability and talent that they can do brain dead stuff and literally have no idea what they're doing and still get a $50 million contract. Okay? This is a perfect example. Now, some people would be like, well, what do you mean? What's wrong with his squats? A whole host of things. First of all, trying to do ultra wide squats with a ultra high bar position, that doesn't work. Usually when you high bar squat, which he has a high bar position, an extreme high bar position, by the way, that isn't usually recommended. That was almost a joke played on American athletes by the Chinese years ago. But normally you'll have relatively narrow stance, usually shoulder width, in the ballpark of shoulder width. That's a standard high bar squat, or an Olympic squat as it's called, right? You keep your torso more upright and you place the bar up on your traps. Now, a high bar squat, it's not placed all the way on the top of the traps. It's just that the weight is supported and rested against the traps instead of lower down the back. In fact, high bar can be as far down as sitting on top of the posterior delts, wedged between the delt and the trapezius, right? You can even create a shelf there, and that's still considered to be high bar. Low bar is when it's further down the back, and you automatically have a forward lean to help facilitate balancing the bar, because you need to keep the bar mid-foot. And usually wider stances are reserved for low bar squats. Now he's got it all the way up on top of his traps. That was a joke played by Chinese lifters on American lifters. They kind of got a bunch of American lifters to do it as kind of a joke to mess them up at the Olympics and stuff. I think there's a bit of a backstory behind that. It's not really the way even they squatted, or most of them don't recommend as high as he has. It needs to be an inch or two lower down. But that's part of the problem. Number two, ultra wide squats with toes forward. No, that's a no-no. Usually when you're doing ultra wide squats, it's to reduce the range of motion a bit so that you can get more depth while moving the weight a shorter distance. It's usually oftentimes a powerlifting thing to move more weight. But also when you go wider, your toes need to go out more and more and more. And that doesn't matter whether we're talking about a squat, a deadlift, anything else. And it has to do with hip angles, because the more your toes are forward, the more you are physically going to have physical structures within your hips that limit the amount of depth you can get. So in other words, you struggle to even maintain the weight balanced across your feet. You can't keep the weight mid-foot. You're going to tend to roll up on the balls of your feet. You're not going to be able to reach depth if your toes are not pushed out progressively more the wider you go on a stance. And again, that doesn't matter if it's a squat or a sumo deadlift or anything else. In other words, more forward toes positions tend to be reserved for narrower stances, but some people still do better with toes out, even with a narrower stance. But there's no debate about it. The wider your stance goes, the more your toes need to go out. So as wide as he's got his toes, he should actually be forming a triangle like 45 degrees out with the toes. You can't even get proper depth with toes forward with that wide of a stance. You'll be forced to do half squats, which is basically what he is doing. And we'll get to that in a minute. And people, you want to mess your knees up, do heavy half squats. That's the best way to destroy your knees, squatting. I've covered that a lot of times in in-depth detail. So that causes more shearing stress on your knees than any other type of squat is to do half squats and stop halfway down. So again, if you're an athlete who needs their knees, you can't afford to have a knee replacement surgery, you're going to lose millions and millions of dollars from time off from your sport, the very last thing you want to do is half squats. Doesn't matter if certain studies show certain amounts of power generation or giving adequate power generation for sports. It's a higher risk version. It puts more shearing stress and inflammation on the connective tissue of the knee. And again, it puts more damage on the knee joint. It's not recommended. You need to be going to depth. You need to actually have at least a parallel squat if your goal is to protect your knees. This is how knees get destroyed in squats. This is why they have a bad reputation for it, is doing what he does. And his coaches are letting a multi-million-dollar athlete do this. It's insane. Even worse, you guys notice the loading is uneven from left to right. His right toe is pointed out slightly more. You notice his weight shifted more, and he is leading with the right foot. In other words, he's having to do that because his left side is weaker than his right. Instead of balancing it in the weight room, he's using compensatory strength and adjusting the foot angle to let him lead with the right leg. So it's actually taking more of the load, creating a muscle imbalance and a strength imbalance, or exacerbating the one that's already there. This is a problem. In other words, this is an example of an elite athlete who maybe decided to do his own thing, got away from good strength and conditioning coaches, or he was never taught correctly and he just did stuff badly from day one. This is a point that we make when it comes to elite athletes. This is the difference between talent, ability versus hard work, and knowing what you're doing. Why is it that I always tell people don't look at what the best of the best do, because maybe they're successful in spite of what they do, not because of it? Here you have an example of a squat style that actually will develop less total strength. It has a higher injury rate. It's going to cause more pain and more discomfort in both the knees, the trapezius, everything else, for the same amount of work that you do in the gym. And the way that he's performing it is further exacerbating an existing muscle imbalance, and he's using compensatory strength to make up for it. In no world is this a good squat. Now, some people will say, but look at the money he's making. It must be because of the squat. No, it doesn't. He is so gifted at what he does. He is such a gifted athlete that he's doing something that is literally brain dead, moronic, that his coach should be fired over, his strength and conditioning coach. Not if they're teaching it, but for even allowing it. If he's got an actual professional strength and conditioning coach watching him and saying, Ron, you got to quit doing this. This is stupid. You're going to get hurt. This is not even helping your game, your sport. If he doesn't have a coach doing that, that coach needs to be fired. Yet here he is at the top. Again, it goes to show you guys sometimes how if you're gifted enough, you don't have to do things right. Your innate talent itself will carry you. Your innate talent will carry you. And the point it comes down to people who are lesser gifted athletes, you can't afford to do that. You can't afford to do that. If you do not have that top 100% athletic ability towards a sport, you shouldn't be doing stuff like this. He shouldn't be doing it either, but you're not going to get away with it. You need to learn to do things correctly. You need to be learning to do things correctly so that you don't get hurt, so that you build maximum power, explosiveness, whatever you need to carry into your game, injury-free with the lowest inflammation, everything else. This is the way it needs to be done. Don't look at these extremely gifted elite athletes who are doing stuff and assume that everything they do is why. It can be in spite of it. And let's jump into the point. Maybe because of his playing style and what he does, the squat isn't the most important exercise for his performance. I mean, squats help. Barbell squats are a good idea for anyone who's got to jump or run. Real good idea. In his case, though, maybe he's doing power clean snatches. Maybe he's done some other explosive lifts, some plyometrics, some jump squats, power cleans, power snatches. So he's probably had some other coaching over the years, up maybe through high school or at the university level, that helped him maintain a degree of explosiveness with his training in the weight room that has been more important than his barbell squats. And so he's gotten away with using piss poor technique on squats and has somehow managed to not hurt himself. But again, we're coming back to a point of that will impact him in the long term. What he's doing right now in the weight room, maybe by the time he's ready to retire and all the jumping and everything else he's done on the court is going to take its toll on his knees. It's going to take its toll on his hips. It's going to take its toll on his body. And in the long term, he might end up being snapped up and crippled as a result of it. But, you know, hopefully the thing is, I hate to see such a gifted athlete just butcher a basic exercise like this in the weight room. It's really scary when we see that happen. I'm hoping that he will look at all this criticism out there and maybe be honest with himself enough to say, okay, yeah, I know I'm in the best of the best. I know I'm one of the greatest basketball players of all time, but maybe what I'm doing in the weight room is going to hurt me in the long term. Maybe this isn't the best. Maybe I need to look at all the criticisms out there on the internet the last few days and say, okay, maybe this isn't, maybe I should be doing this different, if for no other reason than to save my body from getting beat up and to be healthier and fitter once I'm ready to retire, so I can enjoy all those millions of dollars I'm sitting on. So I can enjoy it more with less pain, less arthritis, less tendonitis, less knee problems. Maybe that'd be a good idea. Then I got to spend less money on surgeries, and I can spend more of that money enjoying my life. Hopefully, I'm hoping he'll do that. We'll have to watch and see, I guess. But the point is, guys, do not imitate his squat form. Do not do it. Do not do it. There are multiple things wrong here that you shouldn't be doing. This is not particularly effective for helping his game. It's not improving him as an athlete. It's just subjecting him to injury. And it's better than nothing. Sure, it's better than nothing because he's getting some resistance training there with a squat. But, yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad for all the reasons that I broke down. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.